Zen fam, okie dokie, this video you're gonna need to get a drink and a snack. So go pause and we unpause. Okie dokie. Right, hopefully you got yourself a drink and a snack because we're gonna go deep into this one, boys and girls. Oh yes. Right. So you've probably noticed over the last wee while there's been a trend towards PlayStation 3. The sales from the collector's market have been going up, uppity, uppity, up. Games are being snagged up left, right and centre. And there are a number of YouTube channels who are in the game collector space who are going out there and they're going, I'm going to pick up all these tasty PS3 games because they're all dirt cheap. Oh, lovely. Oh, lovely. And the systems are coming back. Which does bear me to wonder, is there anything that the PS5 can learn from the PS3? Because let's consider it, that system is getting pretty old now. It's edging ever closer towards the territory of being a system, which I gotta admit is a little bit scary because, you know, that means we're all getting older. I mean, I'm pushing 50 here. And the idea that what was once considered to be a next-gen system that was tippity top and all the mod cons that we now take for granted in our systems and some things that our modern systems don't have. Yeah. I mean, shall we list the things that the PS3 could do? Well, first off the bat, the PS3 was the first ever Blu-ray system. So not only was it a Blu-ray system, but it was also the cheapest commercially available Blu-ray player you could buy. If you want to go out and buy a Blu-ray player, like if you're a big cinema guy at the time, your cheapest route was to go out and buy a PS3. Much like the PS2, if you were really wanting to buy a DVD player for the family, your best route back then was to go and buy a PS2. So the PS3 had that working in its favour. Now yes, the PS3 was hideously expensive when it came out, but we've gotten used to such things. I mean, the PS5 that I'm recording this on wasn't exactly cheap now, was it? Now, yeah, okay, the PS4 was a bit cheaper, but, you know. There's so many things that the PS5 had going for it. I mean, the fact of the matter was that when the PS3 first came out, it was backwards compatible fully to the PS2 and the PS1. Now, admittedly, in later models, this was frittered away and frittered away and frittered away to the point when you finally got to the last model, the Super Slim. I believe at that point all the backwards compatibility was gone. But that's what you get when you basically take out pieces of a machine to make it cheaper. And think about that, when the PS3 came out, it was a heavy beastie. And when the PS5 came out, it was a heavy beastie. Now we'll see if the PS5 Pro is going to be lighter. And we do know that the recent iteration of the PS5, what some are calling the slim version, the one with the add-on disk drive if you want that, that is lighter and has a smaller yet more efficient cooling system and stuff. So we'll see how that pans out. But anyway, back to the PS3. There were a number of things that the PS3 did that the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 do not do. Now, one of them the PS4 does do, but we'll get to that. Which is, of course, the web browser. There was a web browser on the PS3, much as there was a web browser on the PSP and the PlayStation Vita. The PS3 basically got that going. So there was a web browser in the PS3. Not a brilliant one, admittedly, and by today's standards, But we've never gotten one for PlayStation 5. The PlayStation 4 one was there, yes. But like the PS3, its web browser, even for the point when it came out, was lacking. The PS3 could also do video chat, video conferencing video chat. You could have more than one person there if you wanted. Did you see anybody doing video chat on PS4? No. There was a camera, yes, but there was a video chat? No. And there's certainly not any video chat with PS5. Now, yes, you can do chat, audio chat, and you can even, if you want to, do audio chat through your phone or tablet with the PlayStation app, and have that running. And there's, of course, the Discord activation, blah, 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 blah. But you know what? Of all the people I am friends with who have PlayStation 5s, I don't know any of them that are actually using the Discord app with it. But if you are, then obviously tell me in that comment section down below. But then you start to talk about the software of the PS3. The software of the PS3 is obviously a subject of great interest, because the back catalogue of just PS3 core games alone, never mind the stuff on the PS2 and the PS1, just on the PS3, that back catalogue of software is just absolutely ridiculous. Honestly, it goes on and on and on and on. And they kept finding ways to push the capabilities of that system. I mean, you have to remember that one of the last games that came out in the dying months of the PlayStation 3 was The Last of Us. That's quite a technical achievement. I mean, when you think of the stuff that came out on the PS3, I mean, you had stuff like The Last of Us, you had, Heavy Rain. I mean, you could honestly spend about a week just digging down and describing all the really incredible stuff that came out in that system. I mean, I myself have a few titles that I miss from those days, like the glorious Mag. I loved Mag. And of course it was also the system that brought us the PlayStation Move controllers. Now, not everybody liked PlayStation Move, this is true, but it was a revolutionary step. Sony basically saw what was happening with Nintendo and what they were doing on the Wii, and they basically bettered it, because the Wiimotes, it was this square thing in your hand, not the most ergonomic design, and it was originally supposed to have 8, or at least that's what I've been told, 8 actuators built into it. When it came out, I believe it had something like 5, and then you bought a couple of years down the line, they released that little add-on thing that you snapped onto the bottom of it, and then that brought it back up to 8 because you've got to sell you the extra functionality. Thanks, Nintendo. Mind you, that's all game companies, let's not get carried away. But what Sony did with the Move controller, just the Move alone, never mind the nav, was they had a whole bunch of actuators inside the controller that were sub-millimeter perfect of the positioning, because they could tell the swing, and they could tell the thrust, and they could tell the twist. But you also had that light ball on the end, so that not only would it be tracked by movement data, but it would also be tracked by sight data, because the camera on the PlayStation 3, admittedly the PlayStation 2 had a camera, but the one on the PlayStation 3 was obviously superior. That's, just fact, it was a superior camera to the PS2. I mean, it had to be. And they'd learned a lot from what they'd done with the motion games on PS2, and taken that knowledge and boosted it for PS3. So when you had the Move controller, you could do all this stuff that would have been impossible before then, and that the Nintendo Wii couldn't touch, because it had 2 ways of reading the movement data, whilst Nintendo only really technically had the 1 way. And then you had the nav controller, which was obviously like the nunchuck, and that just felt even nicer in the hand. It just really did. And the 2 of them would work, and there didn't have to be a wire between the 2 of them. They worked Wi-Fi, basically, towards each other. Or was it Bluetooth? Anyway, there didn't need to be a wire between the two units. And what was even better was that, like, you could take your Move controller and you could stick it in accessories like the gun. The Move gun was a great little bit of kit. I had one for a while, and it was really good for basically light gun games that you couldn't really do now, and you were being phased out during the period of the PS3, because that's when people were starting to get flat screen tellies, you know, and high def tellies, you know. Because when you have a flat screen telly, it doesn't work the same way that an original CRT set works. So light guns, traditional speaking light guns, don't work. And there was an advantage to this because it created a level playing field. I mean, for instance, if you were playing MAG or SOCOM, which was actually the first game that really featured the sharpshooter, the wonderful sharpshooter. I miss my sharpshooter. I sold it a couple of years ago, but I've got memories of that puppy. But the best thing about it was, it created that level playing field that I spoke of moments ago, which basically meant, unlike a light gun, where with a light gun, you could go right up to your telly and go bang, 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 bang. You can do that with a light gun, and you can cheese it if that's how you're inclined to go. But with the PlayStation sharpshooter, with your Move controller in one bit of it and your Nav controller in the other bit of it, so you've got this realistic-ish gun attachment, you had to be far back from your telly. You had to be back here for it to work properly, for the movement data and the aiming to be actual aiming. Because if you were here, then it could read the data properly. But if you were here, it couldn't read the data properly. Because your camera was here, and the light ball was here, it just wouldn't work. So on that particular essence, it created that level playing field and meant that you couldn't cheese the game, you couldn't be a big McChitty pants. Which I personally think is a good thing. Because there's too many people running around in online arenas with like dots on the screens and aim bots and, you know, having little things that disconnect them momentarily and then reconnect them a few seconds later from the network, so then they don't take hits. But they can fire at people because it's the way that like online networks actually collect the data about what is happening from moment to moment. There's some sneaky stuff out there. Also, you have to remember there was really, really cool applications. I mean, aside from the fact you could play video DVDs on it, you could also play music on it. You could use your PS3 and you could create a digital uploaded library of songs. Get your CDs together and you could take individual tracks if you wanted, or whole albums, and dump them into the memory of your PS3 and have them as a playable playlist within your games. Like, if you were playing, the classic example, this Burnout Paradise on PS3, I had a playlist on my PS3 of games from my personal CD collection. I would basically disable the soundtrack of the game and have my music playing in Paradise, which was just brilliant. So I'm bombing it down the roads and crashing into vehicles and doing speed challenges and grind challenges and jumping through billboards and all the rest of it with like System of a Down and Slayer and all other kinds of really cool stuff like Korn and brilliant. You just couldn't imagine. I mean, like when you're going down the road at like 140 mile an hour and you got Rammstein. Oh yes, man. And so you could really customize the soundtrack of your games. What time to be alive. You can't do that now. If you want to basically be having a soundtrack in your games that's yours, you've basically got to upload Spotify, and if you want it to be truly yours, then the only thing you could do is you have to have a subscription to Spotify so that you don't get bombarded with adverts while you're playing video games. It was a better time in a lot of ways. Also, there was an application called Folding Home. Now, this application was basically gigantic source data number crunching. And the whole point of PlayStation Folding Home was the idea that you would give up some of the time on your PlayStation to big projects of like that needed gigantic supercomputers to do the work, and you would provide your processor to the efforts of the work. So there'd be like genetic problems and astronomical problems and math problems. It all comes down to math, really. And your PS3 would be part of a solution. And there was a warm fuzzy glow to be had for that. I was like, hey, I'm helping science. And I just thought that was really, really cool. And of course, one of the things I loved most on PlayStation 3, and a lot of people loved, and a lot of people still miss, is of course, Home. Home was wonderful. It took everything that was good about Second Life. If you don't know what Second Life is, I will explain. Second Life was a virtual environment that we would play on PC. There was no game to actually go out and buy. You basically entered into online servers and you played in environments. And Sony saw that and basically made it better, which is something Sony does a lot of, to be fair. You would go into Home, you would have your own customized character that you would do it yourself, and everything that your character would have about them and everything your apartment had about it, because you had your own apartment. You could have a number of apartments if you wanted. You would customize them with stuff that you had earned through doing things in the virtual environments. There's some of them you could pay for if you wanted to, but a lot of them, and I mean a lot of them, you would earn through play. Which is something that's very different to now when it's like, you want to earn through play? Nah. You want to basically get out your credit card and buy stuff. I mean, I'm sorry, pay to win on your bike, sunshine. Zembloke doesn't play that way. No shark cards have ever been bought by Zembloke, I'll tell you that right now. So, in PlayStation Home, you could run around and you could play with other people. You could talk to people. You would do like fun dances with people. It was basically a social hub. It was a community within a community. You had the PlayStation community, and then you had the PlayStation Home community. And there was always new and fun things to do. Like whenever it was time for E3, Sony would put a virtual representation of the E3 booth, and you could take your wee character and have a wee look around. And for the average schmo, who obviously can't afford to jet off to Los Angeles, stay in a hotel for like 5 nights, get the ticket, let alone a press pass, have a good snoot about, and then fly home, yeah. Never mind the time you're going to miss off work. That was out the question for basically most every gamer going. It's only the press and a few selected bods here and there that was ever able to do that kind of thing. So, if you wanted to go to E3, going to PlayStation Home and going to the booth there was the way to do it. And it was great on granular level and on grand scale. You could play these gigantic games together with other people. And you could do these mass events. I remember like things with always like there'd be about 100 people and gathered in one area, all doing the same dance move emoji thing. Just silly stuff, but people just having a laugh. Or you could even do little tiny things like go to a given social area, and in a lot of the given social areas there was like little sort of gaming bits here and there. And I remember in a couple of them there was like little chess tables set up. And you could sit down at a table, virtually speaking, and play chess against somebody else from somewhere else. That was just wonderful. And it's similar to like the video conferencing that I mentioned before. I was able to video conference with people from all over the place. I remember I used to talk to this guy from Australia quite a lot, lovely bloke. And in home, the same thing was possible. Now, you couldn't see them, but you would see their virtual representation of them. Now, this was just all 2D on screen in 3D environments. There was no VR yet. But it didn't matter. It was like it took everything that's great about virtual spaces. I mean, forget your metaverse and your rec rooms and all the rest of it. It was just something, charming and admittedly a little bit sometimes broken about PlayStation, but that was part of its charm. Kind of like the Bethesda charm before Bethesda charm became a hassle. So it was just a cool place to be. But the main thing that I think that PlayStation 5 can learn from PlayStation 3, never mind the web surfing and the video chatting and the experimental software programs and the wide variety of really interesting controller types like the Move, the Nav, the Sharpshooter, the PlayStation Gun, the Thrustmaster controller. Oh yeah, the Thrustmaster. I had one, and luckily the Thrustmaster controller, not only did they make it for PlayStation 3, but they also made it for PlayStation 4. And it was great when they brought that up from the 3 to the 4, because then I could play Elite Dangerous. It's really good for Elite Dangerous. You get Elite Dangerous, you get the Thrustmaster controller, you put it through PSVR. Ooh! Tasty. So tasty. Man. But the main thing about PS3 was the sense that it was on the edge, because Sony were hungry. They, to no fault, nothing. How do I say this without sugarcoating it? Sony kind of made a bit of a boob with PlayStation 3 from the get-go, because one, they started it with a horrible boomerang controller. Oh God. And the price tag gave everybody, as what the Americans would call, sticker shock, because it was an expensive system. And it took me a good wee while to get the money up. Thankfully, a couple little opportunities happened for me, and I got the money, and I went and got my PS3, and I was about a year and a half behind release. But then that was for a lot of people because it was an expensive system, especially for the time. I mean, you have to remember that, like, when it came out, the exchange rate then to the exchange rate now, very different proposition. So there was this sense that, like, PlayStation were hungry, and because they were hungry, they were willing to try things, they were willing to be a bit more experimental. And that experimental phrase from Sony is something that is sorely missing. Sony have become safe and in a lot of ways predictable. And in some ways, become a little bit squeezy. I mean, the whole debacle that we've recently been through with Helldivers 2. You didn't have to make people take up a PlayStation account. Now, admittedly, it costs nothing, but the game was working fine without it. You didn't have to do that, Sony. You didn't have to make people go through the hassle of having yet another thing on their PC. I mean, PC players, they've got launchers at the wazoo. I mean, they've got ones for Bethesda, Microsoft, EA, Ubisoft. It's like, there's just load of game loaders all day long, and never mind the ones for Steam. Ridiculous. So, no wonder the PC players kind of went, come, another one? So, yeah. But anyway, so the more take a bit of a chance. I mean, if it wasn't take a chance, there's a lot of things that would never have come out on the next two systems that came out in the PS3. It's just a simple fact. I mean, Kung Fu Rider. Could you really see Kung Fu Rider on the PS4 or the PS5? No, I don't think so. Or The Last Guy, or Pain. I mean, there was so many really crazy titles that, like, admittedly not all of them were hits, but most of them were fun in one way or another, even if it was broken fun. There was just potential for days. And yes, okay, the PS3 was an absolute mare to code for. Developers had a horrible time coding for the PS3 in the beginning. But once they figured that puppy out, then the potential for the growth of software on that system was sky high, because it outperformed the Xbox 360, which is one of the things that made it, in the end, more popular. Because when the Xbox 360 first came out, it kicked PlayStation's bum up and down the street in sales. But by the end, at the end of its lifespan, it was showing that the PS3 sales, like for like over the span of the two machines, the table had severely turned. So, what can Sony learn from PS3? I think the main thing that this PlayStation 5 could do would be to just be a gamer's machine again. Get some games on it. Now, yes, okay, making games now is a much longer, much more complicated thing than it was back then in the PS3 days. Games are far bigger. The demands from the audience for graphical realization and lifelike ability and immersion are far, far higher. I mean, we want more, but we want to pay the same for it as we did before. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not advocating for £100 games. Hell no. I mean, I'm a skinty boy like you are. I'd like my games to be cheaper than they are, but I also recognise that that model might not be sustainable for much longer as game studios get bigger and as products get longer in their development schedule. I mean, you've heard me talk before about how, like, if you have game A and it takes this long to be made, then it takes this long of people having to be paid for that. And the more elements you add, the more graphic stuff you do, the more sound stuff you do, or the more lifelike world you do, the more you add, like, lighting conditions, like ray tracing and stuff. And the more things you add, then the more things you need staff for. And therefore, the longer the game takes to make. And the longer the game takes to make, the more the staff need to be taken care of. And that's what it comes down to. It comes down to the human equation, because there's people making the games, and people need to be able to pay their rent, pay their taxes, and eat food. And, like, you know, do stuff like use electricity and heat their homes and wear clothing and, you know, possibly put money aside for a pension. All that kind of crazy stuff. And some of these people might even decide to have a family. And I can tell you, as a family man, having kids, it's not cheap. Oh no! Some of you members of the Zen fam are yet to take that particular journey. And don't get me wrong, it's one of the most worthwhile journeys ever, but it is not cheap. Oh no. So yeah, the main thing that Sony needs to learn from the PS3 to apply to the PS5 is just a bit more of that inventive, take a chance, making new stuff, having just the hunger to be there to sort of like entice the gamer in. It's not enough to go, we are really, really powerful and we can do 4K and we can do high frame rates and and we're able to do something that's a bit like ray tracing, but it's not, because we have to sort of work around it because we don't have the power of PC. That's all fine and good, and that's lovely. I mean, it's something else when you are playing a game and you drop down like Spider-Man, you drop down to street level and the streets are populated with people and there's cars going back and forth and everything has beautiful textures and it feels lived in. That's great. But then, you know, where does that is all just icing on the cake. When you want to get in and eat the actual cake, and you find that there's nothing there. I mean, I'm currently having a wee bash with Arkham Knights, and I'm not going to play it too much longer, I think, because the game is essentially just empty. I mean, I'm traversing through this environment either on a bike that is going the same speed all the time, and it pretends to go fast by making the area around the bike go a bit blurry, but it's actually not going that fast because you can easily avoid traffic coming at you that's going actually quite slowly. And when you're smashing that circle button to do your melee attacks, there's nothing to really differentiate between what attack you're doing apart from how the character's standing, and that's just how you've got them going and whether or not you've pulled them back a bit. And you're just smash that circle button, and it just doesn't feel like you're really connecting anything. And the game largely feels quite empty. And I mean, yeah, I don't mean to relitigate an old game that we all know about, but if games are going to be more expensive and take these longer development cycles, and we're going to have to pay these people who need to have unions, by the way, then there's going to need to be something else to bring us in. There needs to be more inventiveness, and we can't just keep churning out you can't just keep churning out the same games all the time with the same characters. And I don't mean by just like putting out live services stuff, because you saw what you were doing your live service programs and you've scrapped a bunch of them because Jim Ryan put them in place. And Jim Ryan has showed on a number of occasions that though he was good at numbers and finance, when it came to being a games guy, he didn't understand us, the gamers. He just didn't get where we were coming from. I mean, the guy came out and he spoke out against playing like older versions of Gran Turismo on older systems. So you know what I actually think would be a good thing that PlayStation 5 should institute? And maybe even have this be something that also happens in PlayStation 6, which will happen, let's face it. See your PlayStation Plus, right, Sony? You notice that since you raised the price, that your numbers, one, have dropped off of people that are buying it, and a lot of the people that were in at the top tier doing premium have dropped to the medium tier, and a lot of the people on the medium tier have dropped to the lower tier, and a lot of people have just dropped PlayStation Plus altogether. I've got a way for you to save your PlayStation Plus premium and maybe rejuvenate its sales. However, this is going to require you to be a little bit out of the box thinking, and I don't know if you guys have thought of this. So Zimblock, I'm going to give you this one for free. I'm not expecting anything back, but if you want to give me a PlayStation Plus free subscription for next year, that'd be nice. Here's my idea, alright? You want to get people to have PlayStation Plus Premium and have that ultimate spend. That's grand. But offering people the ability to play PlayStation 3 games and PlayStation 2 games and PlayStation 1 games via a false version of backwards compatibility, it's just not going to cut it. It really isn't. When you consider there are so many people out there buying up these older games on disc and playing them on older hardware, and that older hardware, the longer it goes, the more it's going to break down. I mean, yes, okay, there's a lot of PlayStation 1s out there and a lot of PlayStation 2s out there that are still chugging away, but because that's much simpler systems. The PS3 was a highly complicated bit of kit. I mean, the Emulation engine alone, oh god. So, I propose that you keep the game's backwards compatibility aspect of PlayStation Plus Premium, but when you have Premium, that allows you a code that brings in backwards compatibility for playing the actual discs or downloads of PS3 games and PS1 and PS2, but obviously there's not that much in the way of PS1 and PS2 downloadiness. And that would also save server space, which would save money. So you get people spending that money to have PlayStation Plus Premium, and they get to be able to play those games on their systems as long as they have that particular Plus subscription tier. Now I know what some of you are saying, but Sony have said they can't do it. They can do it. There are hacker groups out there that have emulated all free systems, and there are even hacker groups that have like emulated PlayStation 4. Okay, so given that the PS5 can play PlayStation 4 games through emulation, and emulation has been proven by amateurs to work, and they've got it going. In fact, originally the PlayStation Home, you know what? There's actually a guy out there that's organised together a whole bunch of the files that he's gotten from old PS3s and stuff and other bits and pieces. And there's a working PC version. It's a bit janky, and some of the marketplaces don't work and stuff. But there's a working version of PlayStation Home that you can go to and you can play now. That's got nothing to do with PS3, but you can go and be in PlayStation Home again. So if they can do that, and these hacker groups can emulate the PlayStation 1, the PlayStation 2, the PlayStation 3, hire these people, talk to these people, get them on board, and get them to work with your engineers and your software brains who are tippity top. I mean, your guys, Sony, are some of the best in the industry. We know this. So work together with these groups, bring in your engineers and their engineers, and make it so we can slot in a PlayStation 1 disc, a PlayStation 2 disc, a PlayStation 3 disc, a PlayStation 4 disc, and run them on a PlayStation 5. And maybe in the future even, all PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, and PlayStation 5 discs running on PlayStation 6. That would be the way forward. Even going further, how about a dongle that connects to the PlayStation, to the PSP, and or another one even for the PlayStation Vita, where you can run those games via sort of a reverse version of remote play. So remote played back into your your home system from your mobile system onto your telly. Now, admittedly, there's going to be some games where you'll have to end up using your mobile system as a controller, with like some of the stuff on PlayStation Vita, because it's got those touch controls, especially with that back touch. But that would be amazing if you could be looking at the screen and you could do the back touch stuff. I mean, the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 5 have both got a touchpad. So you could easily emulate the ideas of touch games from PlayStation Vita onto PlayStation 5 through a dongle for either one or both of those mobile systems through PlayStation Plus Premium Walled Garden. Yeah. I mean, obviously you'll come up with a better name, because, when it comes to applications, sometimes you're good at naming stuff, but when it comes to your mobile phones and your headphones, oh my god, you can't name stuff for toffee, Sony. Although you do make good headphones, and your headphones for the PlayStation 3 were absolutely fantastic. I mean, the original Pulse headset, I love that thing, that silver headband, those ear cups, the noise cancellation, the virtual 7.1 surround sound. Mwah, chef's kiss. And you know what, I'll tell you, even that original Pulse headset, better than this headset. Now don't get me wrong, this is a good headset. It's comfortable, it sounds nice. The mic could do use a bit of work. I've not had the chance to have the new headset, but then you know, I spent money on this. It's like, I don't really feel like I can justify the upgrade to myself. Even though I do know that technically it's a better headset and apparently the mic's better. But that original Pulse headset, oh, hairy ant, was that nice. So what I'm basically saying to Sony is, take your time a bit, make your games, but try and have original ideas. Try and get back some of that crazy take a chance. Let's have some new IPs. Let's think about what it is to actually play a video game rather than look at a video game. And also, if you could like bring the browser capabilities back, that too would also be quite lovely. Anyway, I think I've probably come through everything I can think of, but crucially, if there's something that I have missed, then please, I implore upon you, typey down below, let Zenblock know. What did I miss? What did I not talk about? What do you think that the PlayStation 3 can teach the PlayStation 5 about being a successful Uber console of joy? Anyway, hashtag support Scottish YouTubers, and of course, as always, aye, nae bother.